Hello and welcome to the Voice of Peace program, where we talk about peace, nation building, constitution making, and electoral process. And in today's discussions, we will be talking about women political participations in decision making. Despite the 35% affirmative actions, women participations at the political level in the decision making has remained low. What are the challenges and what can be done to ensure that women have more seats at the table? Joining me now is Jacqueline Nasiwa, Executive Director of the Center for Inclusive Governance, Peace and Justice. Jacqueline Nasiwa, you're welcome to the Voice of Peace program.
Thank you, Daniel Garang, and thank you to radio community. And I'm so happy to be in this program of peace. Glad that we are talking about women's political participation today.
Thank you so much. And just to go straight to the point, the revitalized peace agreement mandates the participation of women and give them 35% affirmative action. But despite that, the participation of women is still remain low at the leadership level. What do you think is the reason behind this low participation? Why is the 35% affirmative action not yet achieved better?
Okay, thank you, Garang. At the Center for Inclusive Governance, Peace and Justice, we have been advocating for women's inclusion in peace processes and the mechanisms of the transitional period. And as you said, it's true that participation of women generally remains low. And we have done data fact sheets on women's participation, looking at the executive at the national level, the cabinet, the state level, and also looking at the local government level. So that data has shown that women are progressively being appointed, but also regrettably they are being removed. And their removal, they have been replaced by men, and that makes it difficult for us to attain the 35% affirmative action. So the language of the R-ARCSS itself is the one that is also problematic to women's political participation, because the R-ARCSS only talks about women's participation in high decision-making processes. And also it limits women's participation to parties who are signatories to the R-ARCSS. And with this limitation, you find that there are women who are maybe not in the parties, or there are women who join the political parties late. And as you know, in political parties, they have their hierarchies and their processes. So this has not allowed for more women to be in the parties, to participate under the 35% affirmative action. And the power sharing in the R-ARCSS is also not allowing for women's participation. There are some parties that have maybe, like for example, if you talk about the executive, parties like the former detainees, they have only one position. And we are lucky that for the former detainees, they brought a female vice president, Her Excellency Rebecca Nyandeng. And we had other parties like SOA, they had also one position. And we are so happy that this time SOA has brought a female. And we have now Her Excellency Josephine Lagu, who is also a vice president, and joining Her Excellency Rebecca Nyandeng. So that at least in the executive has done some progress, and that is more than the 35%. I could say 40% now. And I think that's what we had been advocating for. Initially, we were 16%, which means one woman out of 6 members of the presidency. When you come to the cabinet, the number has reduced. We were around 29, now we are around 26. And this has actually reduced also with the removal of the Minister of Health. So you could see that the number of women in the cabinet is really frustrating for us. And this is not good if we are talking about women's public participation, which is in the Constitution and also which is in the R-ARCSS. And this may affect how we participate in elections. Because if we are not in the decision making, and you know elections require cabinet decisions, and if those cabinet decisions are not gender sensitive, then women will be left out in the process. Then we come to the state level. You find that we don't have even a female governor now. We used to have 1 out of 10. And then for the administrative areas, none is even a female. So we feel that at the local government, at the subnational level, women have been ignored. And this is simply because of the lack of political will to put women in those positions. We had discussed with the different parties why the woman is removed and replaced by men. And they told us that actually it is a community issue, that the community, for example, of Western Baragazal decided, the men and women decided that this time they need a man. They didn't have a problem with the woman, but the woman had been ruling. Now it is time for a man to rule. And I'm like, that's not the system of governance. If someone is doing well, then this person should be tapped and encouraged to be participating. But if she has done something wrong, and then another woman should be brought in to replace her. So this is the frustrations that we have. And at least at the state parliaments, we have female speakers or deputy speakers. The number is increasing. Like we have in Lake State, we have a female deputy speaker. In Western Equatoria, we have a female speaker. And also in some states like Jongole, we have also female speaker. So at least this gives us like there's some progress made. In terms of the deputy governors, also some deputy governors are removed. Like for Central Equatoria, we had a deputy governor who was a female. We had even a mayor who was a female. So all these are removed. And that leaves us with no women at the local level at all. We had 2 female commissioners, but our will has now increased. We have 2 commissioners in our will. That makes it 4, but still out of 79 counties. So we cannot call that a success, and we call it still that women have a long way in terms of advancing for women's rights in this country. So when you come to the institutions of the government, and it's good you mentioned constitution making and elections, there are also some gaps. For example, in the constitution making process, there are 57 commissioners. And out of these 57 commissioners, we have 18 female commissioners, which makes like 31%, it's not even 35%. And then we have a Secretary General who is a male. So engendering the constitution-making process becomes problematic because of the lack of key women in decision-making processes. Although we have a deputy who is a female for the Constitutional Review Commission, but also want to make sure that the 35% is not compromised because of one position high up there. For the Elections Commission, it's another story of its own. We have 9 commissioners, and out of these 9 commissioners, only 2 are women. And then all the state returning officers are male. So when you talk about gender representation in elections, and then you have all the state officials male, and then that makes it difficult for women even to feel that they are part and parcel of the electoral processes, and they can effectively participate in elections. So in summary, these are the challenges, and I could say that political will is one big gap, because we had been advocating for the president particularly, that much as the parties have the leverage to nominate and or select their own person for appointment, the president should keep a check on the affirmative action, and including also the SPLM party, which is championing the women's affirmative action from the time of the CPA. It seems the SPLM has forgotten that affirmative action is their baby, and they have to be progressively supporting women in that angle.
And when we talk of women participation, is actually more than just at the national government or within the state government, but it even goes up to the grassroots level within the chiefs and all that. But then that also is experiencing the same things of low women participations. In general, what do you think are the major challenges that hinder women from climbing those positions or from being part of the decision making, even in the local setting?
At the grassroots, we have historical challenges which are rooted to the customs and the traditions that we have. And South Sudan largely is deeply rooted in tradition and customs. And in most of our cultures, women don't have a say in the society. They don't make decisions on behalf of the society. So that kind of system is what is brought into our governance system. And in most of my interactions, even with men, they could tell me, these are issues of community, we cannot discuss them here. And some of them could say women's political participation is not an issue for the community. But again, you find that the community influence is also influencing how women are to be appointed. So the negative customs where women don't have decisions, and I remember when we had one of our female appointed as a Minister for Defense, communities were even writing letters to protest her appointment and saying we cannot have a woman who is escorting to be our defense and to give us orders. And some of them were also saying, how can a woman be leading security, which is very sensitive? These are issues of men. Because, in our culture, they believe a man is the protector. Even if the man is very weak and cannot fight for the family, but as long as symbolically that man is there, he feels like he's the protector of the family and of the community. So this is allowing decision makers and policy makers to think that certain positions are so sensitive that women are weak and they cannot be able to manage them. And this is a perception. We have seen it when we have now the Minister of Interior, and also when we had a Minister of Education. Things are transforming. So I could say that women are not weak, but we just need to strengthen our institutions of governance so that everybody can be able to contribute to this. The other aspect is that because of the prolonged war in South Sudan, most women did not get the opportunity to go to school. So if you take the average, maybe, and the higher you go in the education system, the more ladies drop out. And ladies drop out because of challenges of maybe school fees, but also sometimes these issues of early and forced marriages, especially for communities where they value a high bride price for women. You find that when the girl is now 15, they rush the girl to marriage, and this girl cannot now develop her potential. And once she's married, she stays at home. The husband cannot even allow her to participate in public affairs, and this is affecting how women are progressively advancing. Some men, they don't even allow their women to work in politics. They say, no, it's me, the man, to work, or the community can decide we are sending our men, not you, the women. So this is all factors that contribute to this. And finally, I could say that for you to be in politics, you need to have the economic base, because you may need to have transport to reach out to people, you need to have money to mobilize people. And if you don't have money, you cannot even convince people to come and sit and listen to you, or you cannot be able to reach them. So as we approach elections, economic empowerment of women is very important. In our current law of the Elections and the Political Party Act, there is no set-aside funding to support women's political participation. And I think this, in other contexts, they set aside. It helps women who are vulnerable and who don't have money to be able to utilize that fund to mobilize and also to reach out to their constituencies.
Yeah, thank you. One of the journalists that have been in Nairobi covering the Tumaini initiative, which is the peace mediation between the government and the all-out groups. And this issue of women participation has also been one of the things there where both sides doesn't have women. And this raised a concern from the stakeholders, of which later I talked to the religious leader, and he called on women to also start forming their own political parties that are headed by them. Maybe why the women are not participating well, or why the women participation is very low, is simply because the parties that are existing in the country now are headed all by men, and was calling on women to begin forming their own parties to also increase participation. Do you think this is something that women can actually take on and start doing?
I think one thing is that we are guided by the Political Party Act and also by our Constitution. For you to form a party, you don't form a party just purely for women.
Sure.
We have women-headed political parties which are there. And the political party headed by Tereza Cirision, and that is Sanu. And then we have also the NPC headed by this Mama Loro. And all these are parties that are headed by women. The challenge is that they don't have the finances to grow their party and also to expand to other women. And for the men, I think we had also women who had been in political spaces. Like for SPLM, you cannot fail to get women in the political bureau. We had women in the political bureau of the party. But how the party system needs to be promoting women to also be in those high positions matter. We had SOA headed by women, and when they were going for their elections, the woman was the chair, but they didn't choose her, until recently when they chose her. So I could say that much as we also want to have women to form their own parties, let us support the existing parties which are there. And also other political parties which are founded by men should engender their party processes. We are now happy that the Political Party Council, in terms of their registration, is saying all members who are going to be endorsing a party for registration must have the 35%. And also the decision making of every party, which is either bureau or we call it secretariat or whatever, should have the 35% affirmative action. So this will help to pull women who are in the decision making to be in the decision making of the parties. And I'm hoping that the Political Party Council is keenly tracking this to ensure that there are women in every political party in decision making, and that they also engage in registration. And this will help more women to join. The other thing that women are not forming their party is that when you look at our political system, it's chaotic. We are militarizing politics. So if you see even those who signed the R-ARCSS and those who are now in the R-TGoNU, they have military backing. So for us women, we are not warmongers. And we are not intending to fight our people because we know we are going to be the victims, so that we come into governance system. We are peaceful and we will be advocating for women's participation without militarizing women's political participation.
Yeah, and you see, when we talk of women participation or empowering women to participate in politics, it is something that should not solely be on women to fight for it, but should be everybody. We want to hear what will be the role of the other stakeholders, the religious organizations and the civil society. What can be their role in ensuring that women are brought up to participate in politics with a better number?
What we do as civil society and also what the religious leaders are doing, maybe we need to do more, is to create awareness. We are doing awareness on the peace agreement, especially on mainstreaming gender in political processes. We also do gender analysis of each of the policy frameworks and peace agreements. Like for the Tumaini, we also advocated for more women. At least the other holder groups have brought a few women now, like about 3. And the government has maintained the 3 that they had. And then civil society also, they had 3. 1 academia, 1 women block, and 1 from the civil society forum. So I could say that advocating for more women's inclusion and creating awareness for women even to know their rights is very important. At our organization at CIGPJ, we have a campaign called Know Your Rights. And then in this Know Your Rights, we are talking about the Bill of Rights, women's political participation, and also knowing their rights in the peace agreement mechanisms, so that they can define the role that they can play. The other thing is we require dialogue, and we have done political dialogues with members of parliament at the national and state level. We have done dialogues as civil society with some policymakers. on how we can safeguard women's rights. This is the policy brief that we have on safeguarding women's rights, and we look at every aspect of where can we strike and have entry points for women, be it in the constitution making, in legislative reform, or in elections and security sector reform. So these dialogues are very important for us to understand why women matter in this process and what needs to be done for men also to support women. We have male allies, and I could say that these male allies, they have become influencers. Some of them are spearheading the advancement of women's rights, and we want to see that more men are supporting these women. Because at the end of the day, one hand cannot build a nation. So we require the women also to contribute to nation building. So the faith-based have a big role. They have women in the churches and in some religious institutions. They also need to engender it. You know, when the community see that there's a female bishop, there's a female pastor, you know, the nuns are doing their work rightly, they are making decisions, it motivates other young girls and even other women. They should also have role models within the religious institutions, so that women who are outside can also participate. By the way, politics is not only in governance. Politics can even be in the society, politics can be in the church, politics can be in the private sector. So how do we ensure women are there? And I think recently in December we had a conference for women, we call it Women and Politics. And this is where women unpack what is politics for them and where can they influence and join political processes and lead. So I think these conversations are very important. And the other one, I would say that the church leaders have a voice in this country, but they have not used their voice properly. You know, initially when we were for the referendum, the church was very strong in terms of their voice, advancing for the people's voices. And now we have a country, they should be advancing for the voices of the vulnerable. And that means women's participation should be one of the areas where the churches keep a check on, to ensure that women are not excluded in nation building.
Yeah, and apart from ensuring that the 35% affirmative action is actually implemented and imposed in all the settings, are there other policies that you can think of to ensure the women participations in politics?
I think we had discussed a lot of policy gaps that affect women, and one of it is gender-based violence. And the Ministry of Gender is now spearheading the law on anti-gender-based violence bill, and also a law on affirmative action. So we are all working to that to ensure that we have the affirmative action bill that promotes women's participation at all levels and at all structures of governance, and also the anti-gender-based violence bill to protect women, including even sexual harassment at work, maybe abuse in political spaces, you know. I think even not in South Sudan, but globally, women here in politics, they face gender-based violence. Sometimes they are abused, sometimes they are harassed, or sometimes the language is not sensitive in regards to women's needs. So having the anti-gender-based violence law is very important in protecting women in political spaces.
Okay. Yeah, and to wind up this interview, is there anything that you would want to say that we did not talk about in regard to women political participations?
I think we have two important things that we may need to look into. One is the environment for women to strive. The political and civic space is important. If women see that there are maybe arrests, there are detentions, there's intimidation, they can fear to join politics and get politics. So the environment needs to be set for women, and we need to make sure that the country is safe and secure. Security for women is very important, because if there is no security, women will be running away. Women will be minding about going for displacement, like what we are seeing across the country now. Women are displaced, so they will have more time to think about political participation in processes. The other one is that we have now the decision-making process. It's not having funding, and this process is very important because we want to make sure that the key areas of the gaps in the law that affect women, like for example, marriageable age, public participation, and all.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline Nasiwa, for giving us your time. And that's bring us to the end of today's discussions on women political participations. Ensuring women participations in leadership is a key to a more inclusive and democratic South Sudan. Thank you for following us. I am Daniel Garang, and this is the Voice of Peace program on the radio community, where we talk about peace, nation building, constitution making, and electoral process. Keep following us to get more updates on constitution making, electoral process, and the nation building. Thank you.